adoption and during pandemic. The webinar series this particular series has a special connect. It is an integral part of an INHAF project called Climate Chennai and is meant to do several things. First, of course, introduce the project to Chennai city because we are operating in Chennai. We want Chennai city to know us. Two, to learn more about Chennai in the context of its preparation to meet the climate challenge. That is the main thing. We're trying to understand how is Chennai preparing to meet its climate challenge over the years. Third thing is no institutions and organizations and individuals and agencies who are working on different aspects of climate challenge to learn from them and strengthen the effort in the process. And four, make contribution to the extent possible in developing mitigation, adaptation, and resilience strategies. We'll also intend working with selected, and I emphasize selected, vulnerable communities, both poor and not poor, to help them participate meaningfully in designing response to the climate impact that they would suffer. So this is a live part of the program as well. The project sees Chennai as a microcosm of the big global climate challenge, big climate change phenomenon, and expects to contribute to solution making in the local context, involving local knowledge, resources, and skills. It's an action project by a small civil society organization, and I never fail to say by a small civil society organization, and is meant to take the climate change phenomenon to common citizens and help them prepare to meet the challenge head on. Well, climate change essentially till now is the global level and the national level and the regional level. We are trying to kind of take it to the city level and the people level. That is a very important area of departure and emphasis of our concern. Dr. Raghunandan, who is leading this project for us, and we're very lucky to have someone like him, and is also moderating this series of webinars. And the distinguished panel members that we have today will tell us more on this particular subject being discussed today. There is nothing that I have to say. However, before Raghu Saab takes over to conduct the session, it is my task to tell you why INHAF is running this webinar series for such a long time and what does it aim to achieve. And I am telling this on 107th time. And it's my commitment that we go on saying this till last webinar is over. The reason is this. The underlying rationale or the governing hypothesis for this webinar series is that we as a country, we as people, we as concerned institutions, experts, specialists, professionals, whoever, and even the governments have not been able to read the nature of the urban challenge properly. This is what we're saying. That from whatever we have, it's clear that we as people, institutions, governments have not understood the urban challenge properly. And both its positive potential, because the urbanization has a lot positive going for it, if managed well, and its negative consequences if the challenge is not met properly. And therefore, the response, it leaves much to be desired and seems to lack direction and purpose, both in its immediate context with regard to quality of life of the people and the exploration of its future potential. There is an unspoken, unseen, and unarticulated silent emergency, and the missing urgency and creativity in response is causing harm in economic terms, in environmental terms, and in human terms. So this is important that we're paying price across the board at all levels. And this above narrative that we have not understood the challenge properly or the response is not proper is not to run down or harp on the inadequacies or in any way take away from the importance of the development and investment programs in urban infrastructure and basic services improvement in our cities, which are suffering from massive quantitative and qualitative deficiencies under population pressure, under investment backlog, and under institutional constraints. So these are the major things. This is an effort to argue the case that meeting the urban challenge effectively requires more than the current efforts and investment. It needs much more than what we have. It requires something more and different, thinking out of box, non-conventional approaches, and imaginative strategies. In approaching problems and finding solution, it requires a different mindset, a paradigm shift. No, so what we're looking for is a broad-based societal partnership, is the conceived way of doing this work. Mobilizing societal knowledge and resources, and utilizing skills, domain expertise, and experience of subject experts, professionals, specialists, and researchers, and engaging the interested and concerned institutions and agencies in a working partnership in search for the new approaches and solution is envisaged as an organizational model for this work. And in that sense, this webinar series is a part of a wider societal effort. And I repeat the word societal effort to bring in not only fresh ideas and perspectives, but also new voices, collectivism, new togetherness, new partnership, and new energy in articulating the need for and ways to rethinking our cities. Rethinking is the important word. Both redefining the urban challenge and finding more effective ways to addressing it. It is taking the urban challenge to people. It is preparing them to engage and contribute. It is making urban development challenge a societal challenge, a people's challenge, along with that of the government. So that is the broader objective. That's the vision. That's the perspective based on which we have been doing this for the last 3 years, and will continue doing it for some time to come. With this introductory words, I hand this over to Dr. Raghunandan to conduct the session. Thank you, Raghu Saab. It's all yours now. Thank you. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirtibhai, and welcome to all the panelists once again, and to all the other viewers and listeners. After Kirtibhai's presentation, I will just add a few words about what this series, as well as our project in Chennai, is trying to do. Two short points I'll make. One is adding to the problems of understanding the urban challenge, which Kirtibhai outlined, is a further problem, which is that our weakness in understanding the urban challenge is compounded by our weakness in being able to understand and respond to the climate challenge. and which becomes particularly acute in urban areas because, as we all know, uh, and as IPCC keeps telling us, urban areas are going to be particularly impacted because of their large population, because of their compact nature, and because of the extent of economic activity conducted in urban areas. As much as 70% of GDP of any country is generated in the urban areas. 70% odd is roughly the contribution of urban areas to the greenhouse gas emissions. So, both in terms of contributing to the problem of climate change, as well as being impacted by the impacts of climate change, urban areas come to the forefront. And if we have not properly understood the urban challenge, we have perhaps even less understood the challenge of climate change in urban areas. And that's the reason why we have taken up this project in Climact in Chennai, and which we are studying. And my colleague Bindhu, towards the end of this webinar, will be making a presentation of the work that we have done and the understanding that we have formed with regard to this particular issue that we are addressing today, which is waste, both solid waste as well as sewage. And we have done the same in the previous webinars as well, because as part of our work in Climact, we have undertaken a fairly intensive study of the problems of climate change, both in impacts and adaptation or trying to build resilience, as well as the emissions issue. And Chennai city is one of the few issues in the country which has taken on a challenge of trying to reach net zero emissions by the year 2050, which is 20 years ahead of the national target set by our union government there. So we call that our approach paper to climate action in Chennai. And the chapter on wastes, solid as well as sewage, is what is going to be the basis of our presentation today. I will add that in each of these webinars, our participants have included experts, practitioners, civil society organizations, activists, who have addressed these problems either in a generic way or subject specific way. And we have brought together these such participants, such panelists, both from Chennai as well as from outside Chennai, because the problems we are addressing are perhaps largely common to urban areas throughout the country. And we would like to learn from an overall pan-India perspective, as well as share our understanding of the Chennai problems with experts and knowledgeable people from outside of Chennai, so that we can gain from their knowledge and experience, and hopefully share our understanding and suggestions with regard to Chennai, in the hope that they will get enriched through this discussion. So with those few brief introductory remarks, Chitrakshi, if you could bring up my first slide. I intend to just present to you, just in 3 or 4 slides, a framing of the issues I think that we are dealing with here. And I'm sure some of these will be addressed by panelists. And I would also like to throw these issues to them, so that in our Q&A session or discussion sessions to follow, maybe some of these questions we could take up and discuss, and maybe some of our participants who have joined us may also be interested in this overview, so that they understand the framing of issues regarding waste, both solid and with regard to sewage, in the context of climate change and urban areas. I will underline that because clearly those who have dealt with wastes may have dealt with it as an urban problem, as a waste problem. But here in this webinar series, and for us in our Chennai study, the additional factor of the framing is the problem of climate change. So if I look at it from that point of view, emissions from wastes are among the fastest growing emission source in India. And emissions from waste have grown about 30% since 1990, which is substantial. Methane emissions from waste, which is a large chunk of the emissions from waste, are about 20% of the total methane emissions in India. Other sources are agriculture, etc., fugitive emissions, and so on. I will not get into those. What we need to understand is methane is about 27 to 30 times more dangerous in terms of global warming than carbon dioxide. And if you take a 100-year perspective, which is the scientific standard for global warming potential, it's about 27 to 30 times. However, methane actually degrades in the atmosphere fairly quickly in a time frame of roughly 10 to 20 years. And during this short period, the global warming potential of methane is 85 times that of carbon dioxide. Now, this is a challenge. It's also an opportunity. And the opportunity is that it is important to reduce and control methane emissions and other what are called short-lived climate forces. Carbon dioxide is long-lived, lasts 1,000 years. So it's going to take time to address the carbon dioxide issue. So if you address short-lived climate forces like methane, it has the potential to yield quick dividends in terms of reducing emissions and then therefore in terms of contributing to mitigation and reducing the global warming effect of greenhouse gases. As IPCC keeps telling us, we are now standing at the cusp of perhaps irreversible global warming. During last year, we've reached already an average of 1.5 degrees Celsius more than the industrial era, which is the target set for us under the Paris Agreement. So we are dangerously close to that tipping point there. If we tackle some of these short-lived climate forces like methane, it may help to reduce this 1.5 by maybe 0.1, 0.2, 0.3%. And as IPCC keeps telling us, every fraction of a degree reduced is going to count a lot. So if we tackle methane seriously, it can help to buy some time for reduction of carbon dioxide emissions. COP28 this year in Dubai took a methane pledge. This is not part of the formal agreement at COP28, but this was an event on the sidelines in which 108 countries got together and took a methane pledge to reduce methane emissions by 30% by the year 2030. India did not join these 108 countries because India has a fairly long history of not joining these informal agreements or sector-wise agreements. The argument being that India is worried that the principle of common but differentiated responsibility, separating developing countries from developed countries, may not get the same prominence as they would under the formal process. But a question I'd like to pose is, okay, that is as far as the international formal negotiations are concerned. But can India not adopt this target domestically? We take it as an internal domestic target, formally or informally, and proceed on that basis. And I would like to propose that. Next. Yeah, so the broad status in India with regard to waste treatment is, and I think our panelists would agree with me, that currently waste handling and treatment is rather poor, is quite unregulated despite the existence of various rules and laws, and neglected, even in the large metros where there is some capacity investment, etc. So the conditions in smaller towns and cities may well be imagined. Solid waste, there's some debate about these data, is quite uncertain, and is probably an overestimate anyway, as stated, which government agencies tend to do. We are about collecting 70% roughly of waste generated. Maybe 20% of that is being treated, and the rest just simply lands in what are called landfills, but are really dumps in unhygienic conditions, polluting air as well as the water through seepage, etc., causing other health hazards through the emissions there. And you can see the methane seeping out with flames coming out, etc. The sewage treatment capacity also is only about treating about 19% of sewage generated. But if you look at capacity utilization, that's only about 72% or so. And therefore, the net amount comes to only about treating 13% or so of the sewage being generated. So much work is needed in the metros and even more in the tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Next, please. So the issues, I think, are the technology used both in solid waste as well as in sewage treatment, I think, are quite outdated. They're very far from international standards. We need to address this problem as a multidimensional approach. And a common approach that we are following in our approach paper, etc., is we are looking at these issues as problems which can yield multiple benefits or co-benefits. Now, the co-benefit argument is it depends on your perspective, what you consider to be the main benefit and what you consider to be the co-benefit. So it's very useful to think of maybe not benefits and co-benefits, but multiple benefits. Co-benefits are useful to think of in terms of how you convince people, how you motivate people, policymakers, the public, to join such programs, to support such programs. So a way of selling a problem, the issue of handling wastes, of treating waste, both solid and sewage, is that it will improve the urban environment, it would improve hygiene, it would help reduce pollution, improve public health, and as a side benefit, if you like, it also helps in reducing emissions. Because it may be difficult only to speak of emission reductions to public and policy planners. But for all this, there is poor capability and poor resources in urban governance, a problem we have encountered in this entire webinar series, as well as in the wider 100-odd webinars conducted by INHAF. It calls for a coordinated national policy and programs. There are many national policies addressing urban issues like Amrit, the Swachh Bharat program, the Smart City program, and the urban infrastructure development for small and medium towns, which is addressing tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And the last of them is we could take up the methane pledge target domestically and network that within all these urban programs that we had in order to leverage capacity building and finances. So with those few introductory remarks, I will now hand over to our panelists. Each of our panelists would have 15 minutes each. And I think what I would do is I'll switch off my video right now. But when you approach 15 minutes, each of our panelists, at maybe 14th or 15th minute, I will switch on my video. And when you see my face, I request the panelists to start winding down their presentation. So I don't need to interrupt you and ask you to start winding up. So with those few words, we will start with our panelists from outside Chennai and then come to our Chennai panelists. Professor Chanakya from Bangalore, he's just retired a year or so ago from the Center for Sustainable Technologies at the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, regarded as one of the leading experts in the area of waste handling and treatment. He's currently aboard a train between Chennai and Bangalore. He'll be joining us off and on when connectivity affords. But we have his presentation, both video and audio, and we will start with that. And I request Chitrakshi to please start with his presentation. Chitrakshi.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for choosing me to make this presentation. And at the outset, I would like to state that I would like to make a more positivist approach, a standpoint, where I would like to state that today we are in a better technological standpoint to create a situation that is capable of handling the climate variability as well as create something like a resource sustainability. It is quite clear that as we are developing and our consumption levels have been increasing, we are now producing a lot more waste, especially the fresh or the wet organic waste and dry waste, all of which have threatened the environment in different ways. And even more interesting is the fact that we have now increased the variety of waste, which includes food, paper, mattresses, footwear, furniture, vessels and cutlery, which were not there in the past. In slide 3 here, we see as we have gradually developed and begun to implement our solid waste management rules, we began to collect the waste closer to the source of generation. As a result, what was normally not found in the street bins now have begun to appear. Most important here is to firstly notice that close to 75% of the waste is wet and organic, especially when you take the city as a whole, and definitely more when you take the market waste, street parks, hotels and eatery and residential waste. All of these contain a very large fraction of decomposable waste which was not there in the past. Also, in a lot we find a lot more recyclable materials like metal cans, paper and plastic, cardboard, which were not there in the past. And this is something important. And since we collect them separately, the wet and the dry, it allows us to go in for a better way of recycling and reuse. And let me come back to this a little later. Pointing out that the wastes were predominantly organic and fermentable leads us to the obvious question: do we compost or do we go in for biomethanation? Biomethanation seems to be a lot more environment friendly, as one, the methane is not being released. Second, the methane is captured and replaces fossil fuels. More important is that it also retains most of the nutrients. There is very little loss of nitrogen. Another important issue is to understand that biomethanation as a process for urban wet waste has not been something new. Down here in Chennai, it has been tried for quite as much as 20 years now. But what is important are these pilots, which have now led to us that, or showed to us that it is as a process quite stable, quite easy to handle. And the bigger issue is to how do I make it into a business deal. I'll come back to the business part in the next slide, in slide 5. to reinforce the thought that the concept of biomethanation for urban solid waste has been some time with us. I'd like to show the example of the town of Siruguppa in Bellary district, which managed to treat all of its waste without using a landfill for over 10 years. And what it did was all the wet waste it collected was subject to biomethanation. It generated power, and the residue was converted to vermicompost for its own gardens. While on the other hand, the dry waste was almost completely recycled, and they were not using a landfill for quite some time. This was a model small town which won the best town prize for about 2-3 years in a row. Like this, the biomethanation of urban solid waste, which is really a wet mass with roughly 80 to 85% moisture, has seen many such starts. I call them false starts because they never turned to become a business proposition. So now it's all set for the final dash, thanks to a large extent of policy support and market readiness the technologies have now achieved. Very clearly, as you see in this slide, a ton of urban solid waste on the lower side would produce about 20 kgs of bio-CNG or CNG equivalent, about 50 kgs of compost, 700 liters of liquid fermented organic manure, and carbon dioxide, which is used for disinfestation. All these put together has today a market value close to 2,700 rupees. So per ton per day, this translates to about close to 10 lakhs per year. And the cost of a full-scale plant is about 20 lakhs per ton. So you can see that the payback period has really crashed now. So the question is that are we all now ready to take this path now with this kind of policy support? Very importantly, many of the progressive towns have already taken this route and are on the verge of becoming successful. Here in slide 7, I want to emphasize that the 4 outputs that we saw in the previous slide are what is already marketable today. But depending on what is the main feedstock to these plants, or if you go to a next higher level where you segregate the wet waste even further to food, garden, plantation, etc., then the variety of byproducts that you can generate now becomes much larger and manifold, and they can be reused for a variety of other value-added products. Something like from the digested residue, if it is predominantly leaves, then we can generate mushrooms. If it is banana leaves, then you can make fabric. If it is high lignin material, you can convert it to lignin formaldehyde, or you can use this material as a biofilm support for all anaerobic reactors. The liquid is already being shown to have some form of pest repellent properties, but it can definitely be used in aquaculture or algal culture. And should it have a high lignin content, then you can also induce ligninase enzyme, which can be used for other purposes. The gas, of course, can be, when it is carbon dioxide, can be used for disinfestation, as we saw, as auto fuel, and the purity is so high that you can use for direct fuel cell with minimum purification, and of course a very small power. Suppose you want 500 watts power, you can generate even that. Here in slide 7, I want to emphasize that although we are already looking at 4 byproducts, the gases. An interesting phenomenon that has happened which I couldn't generate enough visuals on them is that as we have increased our lifestyle and the changes have happened, lot more products are being generated from the dry segregated waste, from thermocol, styrofoam, then from that corrugated paper, and from multi-layered plastics, and also from different types of polyethylenes. Now, I just visited a startup which was making designer tiles from plastics for indoor use, and that would be much more attractive and more value addition. So per kg you would get a lot more value. And this is the change when you're seeing that the products that can be made from waste and multiple uses, that is expanding, and especially many startups have taken up this area. An interesting phenomenon that has happened, which I couldn't generate enough. Coming to the area of wastewater, all of us know that about 80% or more of the water supplied to houses ends up as sewage. Many cities have started recycling this for various purposes, especially for local uses. And as a national policy, we have now tried to bring it into various schemes so that water is treated and reused locally. Even in rural areas, although the toilets are different, as we have supplied more than 55 liters of water per capita per day, most of it is now turning into grey water. This grey water somehow ends up, because every village has some water body nearby, it's getting contaminated. The most important part is how do we treat this water locally, prevent it from contaminating local water bodies, and find a very sensible and economic reuse sector. And please remember, sewage and grey water have different problems. Sewage have only human waste, whereas grey water has a whole lot of household chemicals and makes it a lot more difficult to treat. Here in slide 10, one interesting example of recycling that I want to flag is the city of Bangalore, which is now reached a level in which it is recycling about 81% of its sewage generated after treatment for filling up about 140 irrigation tanks and allowing it for indirect groundwater recharge. No one is allowed to take it directly. There are 4 levels of safety nets: the treatment plant, the treatment that occurs in a pipeline, then when it spends some 10 to 30 days in the lake, and 6 months during the soil filtration. The most important part is that what used to be a permanent drought-prone area for the last 15 years, now with groundwater at 1,500 feet, the water levels have risen to now 200 and 300 feet below the ground. Now, this kind of water is for irrigation. Now, Chennai is also trying something similar, where it's trying to improve water security, especially for drinking water security. Here it must be understood that each location will have a different set of problem for which you want to solve. What has happened in the last 5 years is that the impact of droughts have been now reversed, and land alienation, which was a very common phenomenon, has now also been reversed. Horticulture has become back in vogue, and that has become the tomato capital of the country. Out-migration has been reversed. Industrialization has started. And as you see in the pictures, the water quality tanks are almost always full throughout the year, and the water quality, as you see in various containers there, is quite clear. So this has become an important situation where this treated water has become a high value commodity for the local people, and has also become an exemplar for a large part of the world, because this is one of the largest in Asia, and in the world it reaches out to a huge number of people, and that's how it stands as an example for others to emulate. Based on these kinds of successes across, now water recycling and reuse locally has becoming a very important aspect of various urban habitats. So much so, in a couple of cities now, the concept of a waterfront, even in a semi-arid area, has become possible because recycled water has been brought back into local use. People are restoring local water bodies, sometimes merely for aesthetics, sometimes for creating bird habitats. And of course, in Chennai and various places, water security also has been looked into. The local use of treated water in large establishment is already a rule in this country. So much so that there is a surplus of this water, and online apps are being tried to see how do we dispose this water. Most of our airports are running on treated water, the landscapes. And there are such multiple roles in the country, and also domestic grey water recycling within the house is becoming more and more attractive. I would like to bring to this stage that we have had a lot of learning in both the solid waste management and wastewater treatment and recycle. And with various policy supports and pilots, we are now moving towards sustainable ventures. And this is an important stage, takeoff point for all of us, where we have to learn from each other and move forward. Most important has been that we have had to chart our own course in this country, because anywhere you go and you give a new idea, the first thing any lawmaker would ask, you show me where it is working and is it economic. Unfortunately, we don't have such examples, so we had to learn, and that is why this path has been a little slow, but now we have reached a takeoff point. And I want to end on this positive note. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chanaks. No, sorry, Professor Chanakya. It's been an excellent presentation, very illuminating, and I think it gives me a lot of courage and support, because many of our suggestions emanating from our study very closely intermesh with these ideas. I find that Professor Chanakya is not currently online in the train, but I'm sure by the time we come to the Q&A, he would be available off and on to join us. So next, I'd like to call upon Nirmal from Chintan in Delhi, who have for long been undertaking projects and work in solid waste collection, segregation, and management here in Delhi. And before calling upon him, I'll just like to once more remind our viewers and participants, both here online in Zoom as well as on YouTube live, if they have any comments, suggestions, questions, they may post them in the chat box, in the chat room, and we will take them up after the presentations are over. So now over to you, Nirmal. Please, your presentation.
Sure. Just want to clarify first, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks, Dr. Raghunandan. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me here. So as you may have already gathered, I mean, I should probably clarify here that our work at Chintan probably looks at the waste management, solid waste management landscape across India, but because we're based in Delhi, of course, the bulk of our focus is here in Delhi. So with that, I just want to run you through a few figures first. So the management of municipal solid waste in India is a huge problem, not only because there are environmental and safety concerns, but also because of the sheer quantity of waste that we generate each day. So let me give you some illustrations here. So statistics here. So the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change had estimated that India had generated generates almost 62 million tons of waste a year. That's about 1.45 lakh tons of municipal solid waste that we generate in a day. And Delhi alone, according to the MCD in his most recent annual report, had produced as much as 11,332 tons of solid waste in a day. Now, if you also look at the latest census, the 2011 census, what we also saw was that there was a 31% of the India's population reside in urban areas, though that may seem relatively insignificant. That's about 377 million people who are residing in India's urban agglomerates, but they produce an estimated 1.43 lakh metric tons of municipal solid waste. Now, this only with the population figures likely rising, there's inevitably going to be an increase in the amount of municipal solid waste that urban areas generate in each year or each day. Now, to make matters worse, nearby towns, satellite cities are also seeing a surge in numbers from between 2001, where you saw 5,161 people, to about 7,936 in 2011. And this is across satellite cities and towns in India. And waste generation in that last decade alone had risen to about 2,775 metric tons in a decade. ULBs are vital here in this regard because they play a pivotal role in the management of municipal solid waste. They also are responsible for the implementation and monitoring systems for urban service delivery. So like your maintenance of your public toilets, but their primary focus is in municipal solid waste. And then there was also the launch of the Swachh Bharat mission, which provides the basic infrastructure that you need for access to sanitation facilities for every family. Now, 67% of the urban areas that in India have a door-to-door collection system in place for municipal solid waste, but only 23% of the waste generated ever gets processed, and the remaining gets landfilled. And I think it's in this context that I have to talk about landfill waste. So landfill waste are the third largest emitters of greenhouse gases. ISRO had recently come up with conducted a study. The study itself was titled "Detecting Methane Emissions from Space in India," wherein in the course of their study, they discovered that there are 22 such methane hotspots in India. Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Pune, and Surat are among the highest emitters of methane. And so very recently, I also had a chance to take part in a panel discussion, which was conducted by CSC, and Dr. Risha, who was actually part of that panel, who said that in 2016, 1.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide was released in landfills alone. By 2050, landfills will have been responsible for releasing as much as 2.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide. Methane is particularly dangerous because they're primarily responsible for the cause of landfill fires, particularly during the summer seasons. We saw that happen in Kochi last year. We saw this happen also in Delhi's Balaswar landfill as well. One way but there is a way you can circumvent all this. Studies have shown that you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions by 6 to 8% if you're actively involved in reducing your food waste. You can either prevent food waste from going into landfills by either composting it or converting food waste into biogas, which is a cleaner alternative, of course, to fossil fuels. Hence, waste segregation is waste segregation and subsequent composting of waste is vital, as it not only prevents the release of methane gas and landfills, but can play a significant role in preventing the accumulation of waste in landfills. And I'll end here by talking about the kind of work among the many things we do at Chintan, we've also been very actively involved in the diversion of this waste into landfills. And we've been doing that through an MRF that we had instituted that was recently commissioned in February 2021. So in Feb 2021, Chintan had, with the support from the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, North Delhi, and with funding from the Coca-Cola Foundation, we were able to set up a material recovery facility in Zakira. Zakira is, for those of you who are not familiar with Delhi's geography, it's in North Delhi. Now, for their primary objective here was to try decrease the amount of landfill waste. So they've been doing this, and since its inception in 2021, in the financial year 2021-2022, we've been able to successfully process about 865 tons of dry waste and 23 tons of wet waste. That was all successfully diverted away from landfills. And this is because of the efforts of the 50-odd waste pickers that we have working at the MRF in Zakira, 40 of whom are women, 10 are men. Now, our objective here was to, we've been able to get, and since then, we've been able to process as much as 8 to 10 metric tons of waste a day. Now, this has all been made possible because we've had a door-to-door pickup service called Pick My Trash. We go to about 350 odd households. We have 11 bulk waste generators that we frequently go to. This is in communities, schools, communities and schools as well, in addition to the houses that we visit. Compost that we produce as much as, we have about 10 compost pits, and each of these compost pits in Zakira can compost as much as 200 kilograms of wet waste. So the compost that is then produced is then sold to residents in South Delhi under the brand name of Magic Mitti. As far as dry waste is concerned, the facility also has 2 balers that compress dry waste like PET bottles, Tetra Paks, tin cans, which we then subsequently sell to aggregators. Even shoes and flip-flops, for instance, are sold to recyclers. But the only thing we're left with no option but to discard at landfills is sanitary waste, because that is a very difficult item to break down or recycle. It's been fantastic being a part of this initiative, because we've deliberately hired women waste pickers and just waste pickers in general, because we've seen from a lot of the laws and legislations in place that the informal waste sector is not, though recognized by lawmakers as integral to the waste management ecosystem, they're often overlooked in the law. So we deliberately try to make this a semi-automated space. The MRF is a semi-automated, so that that level of inclusivity is created to allow waste pickers to be a part of the waste management process and the recycling process. We've also believed that the impact that we've made has definitely created a sense of a livelihood for waste pickers. But among other things also, of course, is that because we've taken the step by creating a semi-automated material recovery facility, we've seen a few others follow in take pursuit by having something like a fully automated one. So I'm just going to leave it at that, and I'm happy to answer any questions after.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nirmal. Excellent presentation. I think one particular aspect stands out to me, and I hope we will address this towards the end, as well as maybe the other participants will address it, is the approach taken to solid waste collection and handling, which is to do this through mobilizing workers, low-income groups, in doing this activity, which generates income for them, as well as assists in the process of waste collection and handling. And at least the experience I've had, and I'm sure many others have, in areas where government machinery and the corporations are not particularly successful. This, I think, approach lends itself to a better understanding. And I would just like to highlight what Nirmal was saying, that this approach has been adopted in many developing countries, particularly in Africa, etc., to adopt this kind of a method for waste collection and processing at a fairly larger scale as well. I hope we can discuss this later. So thank you very much again, Nirmal. And I'd now like, she's been waiting quite patiently for this, and I think we where are we? Yeah. Yeah. So our next presentation will be from Miss Dakshayani from Chennai. She's with the Enviro Solutions company, and she will be talking mostly, I think, about sewage treatment in Chennai. Right, over to you, Dakshayani. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. This is Dakshayani from Pratik's Enviro Solutions, Chennai. And today I'm going to talk in depth about the sewage treatment plants, and also a little bit of solid waste I will be covering, since I'm doing both. And you are able to see my screen, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Presentations? Yes. You are able to see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am. No, yeah, now yes.
Okay, right.
I think you need to make it full screen, huh?
Yeah, I've made it full screen, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Now is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Today, definitely, I'm so happy to be part of this program. And I would like to present what I am doing for last 13 years. And I started this venture is only purely out of my passion. And in 2011, started as an NGO. And also we have NGO along with the social entrepreneurship also, we are into it. And lot of things, I don't want to discuss it here. It's very difficult to take it forward in the government sectors when we do innovative technologies. It takes some time, after establishing, if we go to them, they will easily accept. Otherwise, everywhere, wherever we go, they say, where it has been done, show me the proof. That is when we started working on social entrepreneurship. And this bio sewage treatment plant, which has been developed in 2011, we did close to about 1,000 plus projects in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu and part of Andhra. And the biggest advantage
Dakshayani, your network seems to be
now is it okay? Maybe.
Yes, because it was coming a little broken. I think you can speak now and see. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Let me just speak about what is bio sewage treatment plant. See, the bio sewage treatment plant is actually a combination of two technologies. One is the anaerobic process, through which the entire waste is broken out by the microbes and the enzymes, and the water gets treated in the process. And the final tertiary we do by using the ozone application to remove the order and then meet up the pollution control board norms for the reuse purpose. And all of you are aware that entire sewage, the basic of the sewage is very clear. It's only the enzymes and microbes which plays a major role. Whether it is a aerobic technology, in that you must be knowing activated sludge process, MBBR and MBR, and lots of technologies people they keep referring, but ultimately everything boils down to the basics of microbes and enzymes. If those two are not there, then the entire process will not take place at all. That is where we started working on this sewage treatment technologies and why most of the STPs are not functioning in our country. The reason is the huge maintenance cost, number one. Another thing is the capital investment. The capital investment, even though due to the government regulation it is mandatory and people are putting up, they are not putting up wholeheartedly because they are not finding any value for the sewage. That is another drawback in this. But ultimately, we have to do a sewage treatment and make it a viable model where it is a win-win situation for both the person who is installing the sewage, at the same time the person who is running the sewage continuously, the sewage treatment plant continuously. That is where we started working on maintenance free sewage treatment plant. Almost 90% there won't be any maintenance in our bio STPs. I'll just explain you how the STPs works. See, you know very well when we collect the wastewater, whether it is a grey water or a black water, combination of both is a domestic wastewater. Which when we collect the COD BODs, we talk about between 300 to 450 to 500 range. This can be easily treated by employing the micro beneficial microbes along with the retention time. And when we give enough hydraulic retention time for the microbes and the enzymes, obviously the water gets treated. But only thing is what happens when we are using the chemicals, mainly the Harpic, Lysol, and other stuff in the domestic, wastewater. The population of the microbes comes down. That is where we are doing the booster dosage of the microbes and then ensuring the MLSS ratio in the entire system. MLSS is also very simple terminology. When we talk about too much of technicalities, people will not understand. MLSS is nothing but a mixed liquor suspended solid. That means the suspended solid is nothing but our sewage, which is there in the solids, in the smaller particles, and that is there in the suspension in the water. What is that we require is the microbes which can degrade it, means eat up that waste in the water, so that we need to give enough time for the microbes to degrade that waste and then treats the water in the process. This is a very simple basic application entire world knows. But what happens in the market, people they have built up so much on STPs, they talk about huge technologies and forgetting the basics, and nobody wants to even get into the basic of what is sewage. So what happens now? People are playing around, and it has become like a mafia in the industry that we also have gone through 10 years back. And then finally we realize that ultimately we need to empower the public, our people, whoever is coming for the sewage treatment plants. We need to first empower them with the knowledge on what is sewage, how it has to be maintained, and why it has to be maintained, and what is the benefit they get out of it. That is when we develop this application. In this bio STP, the biggest advantage is we don't require the operators at all. The entire plant runs on its own because 90% of the process happens with the medias along with the gravity based system. So from collection till the final water, treated water tank, it will be happening only by gravity. That means we don't require any operators to run the plant. Number two is we were talking about on methane emission, we were talking about on carbon footprint. Here the carbon footprint we save close to 90% because we don't use any pumps and motors at all. 90% of the plant it treats only by only microbes and enzymes, and only through media. The media life is also minimum 20 years, and that media you need not replace it every year. And 20 years is minimum, it can go beyond that also. That's the kind of media we will be providing. And it is almost like a fit and forget kind of a treatment plant. The biggest advantage here is when it comes to final tertiary, why we are doing, because even if it is a slight order also, people are not willing to take that. They feel it is very offensive. That is where to support them additionally, we are giving you the final treatment process of ozonation, where it kills the entire microbes in the system and then makes it 100% crystal clear orderless water which can meet the pollution control board norms. And also you cannot even make a difference by seeing the water quality, that RO and the sewage treated water. That is the kind of quality we deliver. And why? Because we are using the ozonation at the final, which can oxidize further and removes all this suspended solids and make it clear water. And the biggest the outcome of the technology is, one is we can reuse this water, or leave it to the lake or river, or do the underground recharge system. And the soil pollution, air pollution we can control, and we can save a huge water by recycling this water. One is toilet flushing and gardening we are doing, but mainly I am exploring on selling of this recycled water. And in the previous presentation, he was talking about it, but I am already on the job in Bangalore. Today, we got about 3 lakhs liter of water, treated water they require. They are willing to pay for both transport and the cost. For 6,000 liter, they are willing to pay about 350 rupees. We have finalized today. About the next 4 days, he needs about 3.5 lakhs liter of water. And we have 100 KL plant in Bangalore. We tied up both the parties, and now the vehicle is ready. And one is they are earning the money, whoever has put up the plant. And the other thing, the person who is buying is actually in the construction industry. He is buying this water for solid whatever the soil excavation they do, for doing that leveling of the soil, and also for construction purposes. In that case, imagine 3.5 lakhs of liter. If he buys fresh water, how much cost he has to incur? Number one. Number two, now in this summer they are not able to get the water at all. That is where the demand for treated wastewater has coming up now, and lots of inquiries we are getting. And our focus is, whatever water you do a treatment, when it is meeting the parameter, and that water has got a definitely a usage for industrial purposes, and also gardening and agriculture. Of course, in this summer, agriculturists are struggling a lot to get the water, and their bore wells are dried up. In that case, by making these STPs functional, these treated water, because most of the apartments, if you look at 100 KL, 200 KL plants, they are able to use only 30 to 35% of the treated water. The rest they are saying, where do I let out? And they are going and fighting with the government. You give us a the drainage pipeline where we can let out the treated water. And but there is no pipelines, and they are left with nothing, that they have to call up a lorry tanker and dispose, or somewhere nearby lake or somewhere they have to. But there is a threat when we are asking them to do that, because they know very well they are not making any out of it. So obviously they are not even treating the water, they are letting out the raw sewage itself. That threat, if you are able to give the value for that money, obviously those people, they start working on maintaining the STP also. Well, one is on quality front. Number two, when I'm talking about 80% savings on the maintenance, let's say 100 KL plant, normal STPs, aeration STPs, if you install, it will cost you about 85,000 to 1 lakh rupees a month, means roughly about 12 lakh rupees a year. Whereas when it comes to our bio STP, it will cost you only 25,000 rupees a month, or 20 to 25 maximum. I'm talking about including electricity. Electricity, it will not even comes to you about 2,000 to 3,000 rupees a month, because we don't even use electricity at all. This is where we are talking about carbon footprint, where we don't even use any pumps or motors to do that, whatever related to the carbon, this one. But when it comes to reselling of the water, there is a huge scope in the market. But only thing is, we need to make it a viable model, sustainable model, which can take care of, one is STP. If you do installation, they'll maintain well. Number two, the disposal of the water, that will have a high value in the market, so that we can capture that market also. And easily we can ensure that one side, the functioning of STP, that means controlling the pollution we can do. On the other side, saving the groundwater again. When people are using for high raised buildings all fresh water, where is the water for drinking? That is the biggest threat. So whereas we can by diverting this water for the construction purposes or industrial purposes, obviously one is they will also save cost for purchase of water. So number two is, here STP also will function well, because they are finding the value for the treated water. This is the model which I proposed even here also in Chennai for Tiruvallur collector office. Now almost the tender is in the process, and where almost 1 mld of water per day, we are going to just sell it off near to that area, nearby areas. And I'm already on to it. And there are other builders where people have taken our STPs. Now we started tying up with all the construction companies so that they'll be able to supply their treated water. So our STP will taken care. Even though I'm saying 20% maintenance, and even for that, when they are getting the revenue like this, and obviously you must be knowing how they maintain the STPs. Means indirectly we are ensuring that the customer will have more interest to run the STPs rather than switching off. But anyway, in our case, there is no switching off at all because it is completely an automated system. Because of that, even if there is any human intervention, then STP will not function. Our STP, we are telling them very clearly, not even one person should touch our system. Once it has been installed, it will run for years and years. And this kind of systems only we proposed even for the government also in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. It is in the process. And wherein all these lake areas, wherever they have a sewage inlets, like grey water treatment system, we have developed. We have a grey water treatment technology, very simple applications. And by treating that water in the villages, wherever, let's say, there is about 200 houses and lake is anyway, it is there. But if you are doing that and the entire village needs water, and that entire agricultural, whatever they require water, that can be given by this grey water treatment plant. That is also under the the estimate stage only now. But if you people are also started taking up this kind of thing, it is like a circular economy what we are talking. Green technologies, emission is almost nil. I can say only 10% compared to any STPs. And more than anything else, when you are giving a value for sewage, I'm telling you, 100% people will not give up, because again, that's a business model. If I say only you install HTP because it is as per norms, you are supposed to treat water, it is your responsibility, nobody is bothered about it. And they try to bribe, or they try to do some shortcut method where they can let out the sewage to nearby houses or maybe the neighbor houses. But when you are start giving them a value, that is where people will start of getting into these technologies and they will adopt it. And the successful projects I just wanted to showcase to you. This is in Shantiniketan in Bangalore. It's about 100 KL plant which is running for last 5 years. And this is another project where we have done 50 KL plant for the Star Hotel. And this is a Sur Sipcot project, 55 KL plant which is running for last 1.5 year. And this is the treated water quality. And here it is actually Adani Port in Nellore we have done. One project we did last year, and the second project also we executed. That shows, how happy the customer is. And this is Tamil Nadu Golf Club. It is there in the Mount Road we have done. Here, the beautiful thing what I have done is, very well, when it comes to ETP, effluent treatment plants, you will have more contamination due to oil and grease. And that is where we have applied one more applications where we can use that oil cakes, which can be treated, which is actually a colonies of bacteria which can degrade the oil in the chamber itself before letting out to the collection tank. And from there, as usual, through bio-STP process, we do the process. And here it is also running very well. Anybody, if they want, they can visit and then take the feedback also. And this is the quality I said. This is in Engineers India Limited in Suruseri IT Park. 2 years I managed it and handed over to them. And this is the kind of RO water, and you can see the bio-STP treated water. This kind of plants, I can give you minimum 1,000 plants in Chennai, Tamil Nadu alone. And this is the testing, whatever the test it has been done. It is long back, 2019, but I'll give you the latest, which we have done it for collector office, Tiruvallur collector office reports. I will show it to you. And this is in Chennai Metro Rail. This we did in 2017. And you can see the director interview in our website also, his testimonial in our website in the front page itself. And it is a sustainability project which we executed. And here, Mr. Narasimhan, almost for last 8 years, this is running. The beauty here, I wanted to tell you, this is actually a bioseptic tank system we did for these people, wherein it is only about 5 to 6 houses, and the entire wastewater will be collected in the existing septic tanks, whatever they have, and we implemented our biosystem, wherein the collection tank, it will pass through our reactor tanks by gravity itself, and the final treated water, what he is showing, you will get. And that water is 100% recharged back into the soil itself, along with the gardening. Little bit of gardening only they will have, because most of the smaller apartments, wherever you talk about 5 houses, 6 houses and all, they will never have a garden space. So in that case, where do they let out the water? Treated water. That is the challenge. That everywhere, wherever we go, ultimately they are willing to invest money also for the STPs, but they don't have an option of disposal of the treated water. We got an application wherein the partially almost 70 to 80% of the water in the subsoil surface itself, it will be evaporated, and another whatever 20-30% of the water they can reuse if they want. And as he mentioned in the previous presentation, basis on the soil type, basis on that topography, and we take even the soil reports and other stuff, and then we do a analysis, and basis on that only we will give the system to them. What is that it has to be implemented for that particular project. And this plant is running for last 8 years. If anybody wants to take a look, they can visit. Like that, we have done a number of projects. Mainly our focus is decentralized wastewater management system. Rather than bringing all the wastewater to one common place and then doing treatment is a huge task. Again, investing on pipelines and other stuff. Whereas when it comes to an individual house itself, we are giving a turnkey project of 95,000 rupees, one single household, lifelong guarantee for them. 100% that water will be treated, both grey water and toilet water put together I'm talking about. And it will meet, whatever the rules and regulation is there, it will meet up the parameters. And that water, they need not, dispose anywhere. It will be disposed in their own premises itself. That kind of projects we have done plenty. Maybe we can give you, so that individual houses, smaller apartments like 5 houses, 7 houses, 10 houses, they can go. That means up to below 5K, below 5 KL, we can go for this system. Whereas anything above 5 KL, we are going for a bio STP, wherein we want them to treat the water, either sell it or recharge back into the system.
Ms. Dakshayani, I'd request you to please wind up, otherwise we won't have time for the other presentation and discussion.
Sure.
Thank you.
2 seconds, I'll take it, sir. Yeah. And this is the comparison chart. Anyway, you can go through it. Maybe all these test reports and all, maybe we can share it later also. Yeah, this video you would like to play, or is it okay? We can play it later, sir. It's just about a 1 minute video only.
We can play it later, ma'am, if that's okay.
Yeah, not a problem, sir. Not a problem. So I am through with my presentation. If anything is related to sewage, I'm open for the question and answer.
Great.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dakshayani. Without further ado, I'll ask Dr. Kurian Joseph to make his presentation, please. He's head of the climate change department at Anna University, and he will make his presentation now. Dr. Kurian?
Yes. Hope you're able to see my screen.
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, thank you very much. At the outset, I take this opportunity to congratulate the INHAF team. Okay, it's a great effort that they are organizing 107th event webinar. So this shows their consistent efforts in sustaining this. Okay, and also I thank you all for this opportunity. I'll take about 15 minutes. Our focus is on solid waste and sewage, but I will limit the focus to solid waste, especially in Tamil Nadu and more specifically Chennai context. As we all know, solid waste is a global issue and it's also a local issue. And we also know all of us are generators of waste. So we also have to be part of the solutions. And when we talk about solid waste, there are different subcategories to it. But in this presentation and in this discussion, we will limit it to the municipal solid waste. And when it comes to municipal solid waste also, there are several mandates as per law we are required to do. And we have this law in existence nationally for the past 20 years, which requires that we should take all of us to minimize the generation of waste. We should segregate and store the waste at the place where it is generated. Then it should be collected in a segregated manner and it should be transported properly. It should be processed, especially the biodegradable waste and the recyclables, and the residue is to be disposed in an environmentally accepted manner. We should also address our legacy in terms of the dump sites, which needs to be remediated. And there are also specific responsibilities with reference to those who generate this waste in bulk and also those who are the producers of especially the packaging category in terms of extended producer responsibilities. In spite of this legal framework, all of us talk and all of us are aware that there are deficiencies, which starts with poor segregation, limited storage in public areas, transportation in open trucks, very little processing, and unscientific disposal, and that is the dump site. And if we ask why it is happening, we have several reasons to put it and blame on each other, saying that that is not proper. And very often the challenge that happens, especially from municipalities' point of view, is that they say public is not aware, public is not cooperating, they are not participating. We don't have land to locate the facilities, and the private people are driven by profit. So we are also not able to create an economically viable business model by which the private entrepreneurs can come in and then play a crucial role in waste management. It is in this context we should look at the waste management and climate change, the connection. As already indicated by Dr. Raghunandan in his introduction, there are several positive and negative connections with solid waste processing, and climate change. And it starts with emission of methane, which comes from the biodegradable waste which we dump. And it is also connected with the burning of plastic, which is similar to burning of fossil fuel, because the origin of plastic is fossil fuel itself. Nitrous oxide from combustion processes and the carbon dioxide that gets emitted when we burn or use fuel for transportation or processing of waste, and especially electronic waste. There are also other type of greenhouse gases. Now, the solid waste processing also has got negative fluxes, which means it can help in addressing the climate change in terms of the energy that we could recover from the processes to replace energy from fossil fuel-based sources. Recycling of waste, which limits the need for producing new materials, which is energy intensive. So the energy efficiency that we get in terms of material recovery, reducing, and also the use of compost, which is an excellent additive to enhance the soil carbon and also carbon storage. The carbon in compost, if we can incorporate in the soil, that is a long way of storage of the carbon, because the carbon from the atmosphere is fixed in biological materials and that we compost and put it back. We are in a way capturing the carbon from the atmosphere and storing it in the soil. So there are positive and negative connections. And when it comes to the waste generation scenario in Tamil Nadu, we have done a recent assessment which tells that about 17,000 tons of municipal solid waste is getting generated in Tamil Nadu, of which almost 45% is from Chennai. That is about 7,600 tons every day. And of these 7,600 tons that is generated, in terms of wet waste processing, about 1,000 tons get processed in micro-composting centers, bio-CNG plants, green waste, that is garden waste processing, and also small biogas plants, etc. And about 800 tons of dry waste also gets recycled or gets diverted by recycling facilities or waste to energy facilities. But still, we have about 5,000 plus tons of waste, which is getting dumped in two dump sites, the Kodungayur dump site and Peringudi dump sites, which on an average receives about 2,000 plus tons of waste every day. And if you look at the quality of the waste that gets dumped after diversions, as already have indicated, we could see that almost 50% of it is biodegradable waste. And if biodegradable waste is getting dumped, we know methane emission is the possibility. And we have done an estimate, and our estimate says that every day about 150 tons of methane is getting emitted from the different dump sites. So how do we deal with this waste that is getting dumped is the basic question. Of course, for the biodegradable waste, there are only two routes that is possible. For easily biodegradable waste, we should take the biomethanation route or the bio-CNG route, and the rest of the waste should take the composting route. And that is the model that Tamil Nadu is following. And to the extent possible, this should happen as close to the source of the waste as possible. So the model that is followed is for composting and biomethanation. This should happen in a decentralized manner, the approach which Ms. Dakshayani was talking for liquid waste. And when it comes to the recyclables, part of it is combustible, and to the extent possible, we should try to recycle. But still, our studies shows that about 30% of this combustible waste will be contaminated and will be non-recyclable combustible waste, for which we should also have a waste to energy facility. So if we have this integrated approach, waste management solution will emerge. And in Chennai context, of course, the waste quantity has increased, but there are also several initiatives which the city corporation is doing. It starts with the waste segregation promotion. Almost 95% of waste collection up to door-to-door level is happening. And there is also a great effort initiated in the past 1.5 years with reference to promoting the waste segregation. And to minimize the greenhouse gas emission during the collection and transport process. The collection vehicles have been fully made battery operated. So that is one initiative. There are about 5,000 plus battery operated vehicles which are used for door-to-door collection. The transport vehicles also have been renovated with the BS6 compliance and fuel efficiency. That also contributes to significant reduction in the greenhouse gases. Decentralized processing of waste. About 15% of the waste gets decentralized processed through micro-composting centers or biogas plant. There are two big biomethanation plants or CNG plants in operation, which takes care of about 200 tons of waste every day. There is also a centralized composting facility of 100 tons. But this is not enough to deal with the 7,000 tons of waste that we are generating. So there are several projects in pipeline, which includes additional capacity for biomethanation, additional capacity for the MCCs, micro-composting centers, increasing the resource recovery centers, and also in addition, we have the C&D waste and the garden waste, which itself accounts for about 1,000 tons per day. So there are two C&D waste processing facilities and two garden waste processing facilities. And this is diverting about 1,000 tons of waste per day. And Chennai is also, not only Chennai, almost all the urban local bodies of the Tamil Nadu is very active with reference to dealing of the dump site, remediation of the dump site through the biomining process. In Chennai, out of the two dump sites, in Perigudi dump sites, already the process is nearing completion with reference to biomining of 32 lakh cubic meters of legacy waste. And at Kodangayur, also the biomining process is going to start, by which about 68 lakh tons of legacy waste will be recovered, processed, and it will be either reclaimed as bio or inerts, and the RDF, which could substitute the fuel requirements in cement plants. So to a great extent, we can say that efforts are there now in line with addressing the solid waste, but it requires the support of the different stakeholders, including all of us who are the generators of waste and who has to also support the waste management facilities, especially by segregating the waste. This is one of the bio-CNG plant which was set up 1 year back, which is operating very well in terms of processing 100 metric tons of biodegradable waste, and the bio-CNG that is generated is bottled and sold. And we have also done an analysis in terms of the waste to energy facilities and how it could be located, where it needs to be located. This was a study which is undertaken on behalf of the State Department of Environment, where we have suggested centralized waste to energy facilities, regional waste to energy facilities to come up in at least 6 locations of the state, which will be able to cater to the non-recyclable combustible fraction of the waste, by which we could also recover the energy. So to summarize, I will say that waste to or waste processing or waste management is not just a technology issue. And very often where we fail is in terms of this integrated approach. Very often we focus on one element or the other element. It has got the different elements of waste reduction, segregation, storage, collection, transport, processing, and the residue disposal. And that involves at least these 7 M's. The material aspect means the waste, and if you have to manage the waste, you require land and also energy. The products of waste processing or the residues of waste processing also needs to be taken care. And of course, the public and other people who are associated with people also should have the right mentality to collaborate, especially in terms of minimizing the waste and segregating the waste, and also paying for waste management. There are technologies which are well established, but such facilities need to be developed, and we also need competent people who will be able to operate this, and also the ecosystem by which business players can come in and take it forward. So I will conclude by saying that waste management means we should be looking at the circular economy. It is something, the waste is something which we should minimize and it should get back. For that, since the solid waste is not like liquid waste. Liquid waste is homogeneous in nature. Okay, but solid waste is highly heterogeneous in nature. So prevention of waste should be the starting point, and that message should percolate down. Of course, all the waste we can't prevent, so we should also segregate. And just sorting doesn't mean that it will lead to recycling. So the sorted waste should go for recycling. And recycling doesn't mean that it gets recyclable, doesn't mean that it gets recycled. So recycling also doesn't mean that it gets in the circular loop. So let us do whatever as individuals we can do, and whatever as the waste managers, especially the municipal authorities, are required to do, so that we'll be able to use this climate change as one of the reasons to address the waste management. Because when we talk about the contribution of waste sector to climate change, globally, it is about 5% or less than that. But in developing countries, it is estimated to be about 10%. In Chennai, the C40 has done a study. According to their estimates, about 13% of greenhouse gas contribution is coming from the waste sector. So if we address that, on one end, we get the climate benefit, but more than that, it is the public health benefit that we'll be getting. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kurian. I have some questions, some points to discuss, which we can take up later. I'll now ask my colleague Bindhu to present the findings from our study, which also takes into account some of the recommendations and plans of the Greater Chennai Corporation as part of their climate action plan. Bindhu, over to you.
Yes, can you see the screen?
Yes, Bindhu, and I will suggest to you that you quickly just show the initial slide so that you can get down to the subject matter.
Sure.
as quickly, otherwise we won't have much time for discussion.
All right. Yes. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful presentations. It was really insightful. There's a lot that we would like to take forward from what we learned. So over the past few months, we have been working on what we would like to call the approach paper to climate action in Chennai. And it is basically proposals for climate action in Chennai that is based on a lot of research and study on the existing context, the climate change impacts, adaptation, resilience, and emission reduction potential across various sectors of the city development. It also, very importantly, it reflects on the latest Greater Corporation of Chennai climate action plan that was released recently. It tries to identify gaps, weakness, and suggest improvements, and tries to add value. And a very peculiar aspect of the paper is that we emphasize actions with co-benefits between sectors across the adaptation and mitigation theme. And this is also a work in progress document that we would like to keep iterating, upon interactions with various stakeholders and experts. Very briefly, the approach paper has two main sections, adaptation and mitigation, as you can see in this slide. And today we will specifically be focusing on solid waste and sewage. I am going to jump straight into the issues around Chennai's waste management. We've highlighted around 6 main issues, and the first one is its highest waste generation. Chennai generates approximately 0.75 kg of solid waste per capita, which is the highest in the country. And it is, the waste sector in the city is the third largest source of emission. 13% of Chennai's emissions are from solid waste and sewage, which accounts to 1.9 million tons carbon dioxide equivalent. Secondly, the second issue that we want to focus is the lack of efficient source segregation. I think this is the key issue to the loopholes or the gaps in the waste management system of Chennai. There is absolute inadequacy in source segregation and collection. There are a lot of efforts that are being taken, but it is all happening in bits and pieces. There is no chain of events that is happening, to make it more efficient. And when we look at how much percentage of the households are really segregating waste at source, there isn't much awareness, and not every part of Chennai is doing it. And I think this is also because of lack of enforcement and regulations, in order to segregate waste at a household level. For example, 45% of collected waste is segregated at source, and still 80% of waste is unloaded into the dump yards unsegregated. So this is the kind of, this is the situation of, even the segregated waste is again being dumped back into the dump yards unsegregated, because there is not enough capacity. The collection of waste itself is inadequate, not enough capacity to further process it in a sustainable way. Thirdly, I think we have to speak about the unscientific dump yards. The city has two main dump yards, one at the north and one at the south, the Kodangiyur dump yard and the Perungudi dump yard, which are currently just mere dumps that are very unhygienic and causing air pollution, contaminating the nearby water bodies and the soil. These are two mountains of legacy waste amounting to a total of 94 lakh cubic meter that has been accumulated. And these are such enormous sources of methane in the city. Various research and studies have found that municipal solid dump sites release 60% methane, 40% carbon dioxide, traces of other harmful gases like ozone, nitrous oxide, and fluorocarbon. And lately the city corporation has been taking steps in order to make these dump yards into more scientific landfills. For example, we did see in the previous presentation by Kurian sir on lines of biomining that is happening in the two dump sites, and I think it is a good way forward. The next issue we want to focus on is the insufficient recycling capacity. Although the CCAP states that there is a 20% waste that is being segregated and recycled, there are so many reports that say only 4% of it is actually being cycled. So lack of decentralized recycling centers and in general lack of capacity to recycle is something hard hitting for the city in this times. And a very important issue that is in fact underestimated is the underused potential of wastewater reuse. I think we've had a wonderful presentation earlier from Dr. Dakshayani and um, uh, 75% of cities' daily water supply turns into sewage. That is a humongous amount of potential, potential treated water that is just going into the sewage. Close to 30% of untreated sewage is discharged directly into drains, canals, and even the rivers, which again run through the entire city. We also have the issue of inefficient sewerage networks. The chain of the sewage transportation is not continuous, and sometimes it is too long. I think it is important to realize that emissions from wastewater are a major underestimation in the Chennai Climate Action Plan. If you look at the graph on the right, we can see that the solid waste accounts up to 13% of the city's emissions, and the wastewater accounts to only 1%. And we feel that it's not very convincing because studies from NatCom have concluded that methane emissions from domestic and commercial wastewater are substantially much higher than what solid waste produces. So this looks like some serious no, not considering the real methane emissions from wastewater. So that's something that it's addressing. We then move on to potential solutions. Well, obviously, we start off with the effective source segregation. We're talking about 100% source collection and segregation, which is the key to an efficient waste management. There need to be more IEC campaigns for household level segregation. And like I mentioned, we need to have strong enforcement and regulations from local governments. It could be in the form of incentive or even penalties, like how some neighboring cities are doing. And another important point that we wanted to bring forward was that in the CCAP, in the official CCAP, they have proposed 100% home-based composting. While 100% segregating is possible, 100% home-based composting looks a little impractical. Not everybody would have the time to do it, or the area to do it, or the knowledge to do it. So that looked a little impractical on the document. Coming to the co-benefits of this particular solution, we definitely are going to have improved local hygiene and health, more efficient processing of plastic and organic waste, which will result as as we have better segregated waste, and also the cost recovery from recycled waste. These are some very evident co-benefits from effective source segregation. The second potential solution that we would like to propose is more efficient and scientific solid waste processing. We've seen that the processing of solid waste, the percentage is very less. I think even the targets that have been mentioned in the CCAP, for example, for plastics, the target for 2030 and 40 has been only 20%. And for organic waste, it was mentioned as 60%. These targets look very underestimated. I think there is potential to increase these targets to almost 50 and 80% respectively. And we've had some wonderful presentations on biomethanation and composting, which is something we would like to push forward in terms of solid waste processing. Biomethanation especially, which is a very clean and economical method, space efficient, and with maximum methane capture that can be further used and sold, and it could in least resistance from local or nearby residents. So that is something that we would really like to highlight as a potential solution in terms of solid waste processing. And some co-benefits which we would like to point out are definitely the business and employment opportunities in the recycling and waste processing sectors. I think that was very evident in the previous presentations. Secondly, the potential for alternative energy use, especially with the whole methane recovery and use. Thirdly, reduction of local pollution. I think this could even be a direct benefit of it. And fourth is the reduction in water and soil contamination, especially in and around the dump yards, which is currently a very big issue. This could be avoided considering we move to a more efficient and scientific solid waste processing. Another solution is to focus on scientific landfills. Like I said, the transition from being mere dump yards to scientific landfills with methane recovery should be the way forward. Biomining is one thing that is happening in Chennai with a lot of methane recovery and resulting in more hygienic surroundings. So, I mean, the benefits, this would be better livability, redefining the nature of dump yards itself. That's the potential of scientific landfills, especially people living around even 3 kilometers around the dump yards are facing the problems of foul smell, and air pollution is greater in these areas. And I think all of these could be addressed by having scientific landfills. And we also have heard about landfill parks. The potential, the potential to be recreational areas after the digestion of waste is also another co-benefit that we thought of. So the next potential solution is wastewater treatment, recycling, and reuse. I think we've seen such great examples in our previous presentations on this. It is again something that is so fundamental to address with, but sadly we are not doing this at a larger scale. And there needs to be zero discharge of untreated sewage into the water bodies. That is something very unacceptable. And once you recycle, you get the gray water and you can reuse them for multiple purposes that could contribute to the city. And we also definitely need more decentralized sewage treatment plants. I think Dakshayani ma'am's presentation is a great example of a decentralized sewage treatment plan and how it can work. So some co-benefits of this particular solution are obvious. The obvious co-benefit is the reduced dependence on fresh water, groundwater, and also replenish water bodies and green areas. There is a great potential to improve the sustainability of water resources and achieve a water positive urban environment. And lastly, the grey water, that the resulting grey water could be used for green areas, for street cleaning, and for industrial purposes. I think we've had an example of how even for construction purpose, the treated and grey water could be used. So a great way to go forward. I think I literally ran through the presentation because of the time crunch. And in conclusion, we would strongly advocate for the decentralization of solid waste and sewage treatment and the affiliated processes, especially, in order to promote more efficient collection, segregation, and processing. With that, I would like to conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Excellent presentation. Thank you, Bindhu. We've come to the end of all the presentations. We started about 10 minutes late, so I think we can take 10 or 15 minutes more for the discussion. Then we would be within our overall time frame. in the chat box, there was one question that stood out to me, which was a question about whether there is sufficient scope for there were two parts to the question raised by Mr. Atul, and the issues was one, are there business models there? I think both Professor Chanakya and Dr. Kirani have addressed this issue, so I don't think we need to discuss that further. It looks as if there are business models which have using waste conversion, whether solid or liquid, to generate income or to generate services which can be used for the plant. So that's one answer. His second question was with regard to sewage and waste handling and the role of manual scavenging, etc., and whether there were technological solutions for this. And I think Ms. Dakshayani said she had answers to those. So maybe she could address that in a couple of minutes in response. Ms. Dakshayani?
Yes, sir, I'm there, sir. Yeah. What's your question, sir, actually?
See, the question was, you talked about, for example, recycling, etc.
Yeah.
His question was, are there solutions available which can address the issues being faced in manual scavenging, people being exposed to dangers in sewage, etc., and whether these would be viable?
Yes. Number one, in our technology in biosewage treatment plants, sludge is zero, sir. There is no sludge at all. That means the manual scavenging is completely eradicated. And whatever I told you, the decentralized wastewater management for individual houses and smaller apartments, zero sludge, because the entire waste is converted into a gases and also a clear water. And we have a plant running for last 7 to 8 years. We can directly take even the studies also on that, whatever. That is number one. Number two, you are talking about hygienic, because the entire plant is completely sealed underground tanks. There nothing is open to the sky. Normally, if you look at any sewage treatment plants, aeration tank will be open to the sky. That is where in most of the STPs, before even going near to the plant itself, you will start getting the order from that entire area. And people, they don't like to put up the STPs at all, mainly for the order and also the noise. When they're running huge pumps and other stuff, obviously they have noise. In our case, since we don't use any pumps, zero noise, and since we don't require the cleaning and other stuff, nothing is required. Everything is completely sealed below the ground.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that answers the part of the question. But I think his question is still relevant because there are large parts of the country and most cities where this problem continues to exist.
His question,
of course, offers a solution. Currently, there are issues. I just wanted to quickly respond to him in a minute or so. In another hat which I wear, my organization, which is an NGO, has worked along with experts and scientists. We have worked with manual scavenging organization with Bezwada, Wilson, and others. And we have developed a package which can be used economically by groups of converted manual scavengers who can enter the sewage safely using sensors to detect gases, etc., and without having to descend into anything, can evacuate all the waste matter. And therefore think this has been tested, economic. They're working in Delhi, and we had developed this with an assistance of expert technical teams, which included Professor Chanakya from IISc, engineers from IIT Bombay, and we have developed this and handed over the technology package to the manual scavenging organizations dedicated to eradication of manual scavenging. That's just a tip. If anybody wants further information, he could contact me and I'll provide further.
I'm sorry to interrupt here.
Yes.
See, whether you give an equipment or whatever, ultimately we are, when we are using the manual scavenging, they are also like human. right? So like us only. So we don't feel like making them inside going and then doing the cleaning up,
Exactly.
which is very,
Exactly.
very bad.
Exactly.
And number two is when there is a natural microorganism which has been given by God itself to degrade the entire waste, why we want the humans to go inside and do it? That is number one. Number two, when you're talking about on sensors, you know very well, because we also do all this testing and other stuff. It is very simple method. If you have karpuram, we call it as, I don't know in English, karpuram we call it as, wherein we use that karpuram, we just put it in that small vessel and then put it inside that septic tank. What happens, if there is a gas, it will actually flames more. That means the gas is there, that interacts with that fire, and then gas is there, then we say that, it is not safe. When karpuram is not there, then automatically, if it snaps off, then it is understood that there is no gas. It is a very simple conventional method followed by our ancestors. Same method we also do, but we are not even first of all recommending them to get inside itself.
Exactly.
So, and when the simple microorganism, when they can do their job, when we give enough time for them, why we have to break down our heads?
Yes.
This is what is my take on this.
Thank you. Professor Kurian, I had one question to ask you. You were talking about the biomethanation, the decentralized part. You also spoke about incineration and waste to energy. I have a question there. We are facing this problem in Delhi. There is a large waste to energy incineration plant here. And currently, Delhi government is engaged in clearing legacy wastes. They say they are doing biomining, etc. But effectively, largely, they are excavating the material from the legacy wastes and dumping it into the incinerator and burning it. And even studies by Central Pollution Control Board of the pollution coming out from the stack shows that it contains a lot of toxic gases, diurans, obviously because there's not very effective segregation taking place, forans, etc. So there's a lot of waste and pollution also coming out from waste to energy plants. So how effective do you think these incineration mechanisms are, particularly if the temperatures are not as high as they should be? And obviously the operator wants to keep temperatures low in order to save on energy costs.
Okay, thank you. Before answering this question, I'll just also respond to the earlier discussion. I think Mr. Atul was asking mostly about the sewer cleaning, use of machines for sewer cleaning. Okay, instead of manual scavenging. Manual scavenging is an illegal activity. It's banned by law, and cities are using the mechanical modes of so it's already in place. Our cities are using super sucker and other kind of machinery that he's referring to. That is the first part. Second part, see, when we talk about waste management, always we should be ready to have the combination of technologies. Somebody says my technology is the solution. In fact, that is one area where we are getting stuck. Everybody wants to solve the full problem with one technology. That never happens. Okay.
Correct.
And when it comes to solid waste, yes, to the extent possible, we need to reduce. That is the first thing. But whatever we can't reduce, then of course we should try to reuse, recycle. And still it is left. Then for biodegradable waste, yes, if it is easily biodegradable, quickly biodegradable, take biomethanation route. But you can't take all the biodegradable waste to a bio-CNG plant. There are waste biodegradable, but it degrades slowly. So composting is required, biomethanation is required, recycling is required. And even if you do all these things, still you will be left with a fraction which is combustible. And according to our studies, okay, I'm associated with this field for about 30 years. So there will be at least 25 to 30% of the waste which is contaminated, which is not recyclable, and which is still combustible. Okay, so that is the kind of a waste for which we should have, if there is a possibility, co-processing. If that co-processing capacity is not available, then dedicated waste to energy plant. Now the biomining, when you biomine, what happens is whatever waste we have dumped, we are digging out and then separating. One fraction will be the fine soil, like compost. Okay, and second is the coarse soil, the inert fraction. But there is a third component, which is the plastic, the textiles, etc., and which is not recyclable. So the only option is you need to get rid of it. So ideally, what is done is it is co-processed in cement plant, where maximum 5% of this, along with the conventional fuel, will be used. Now, there, when it comes to the emissions, okay, there are controls and technologies available. So incineration is not just burning the waste. Okay, it also is associated with the required environmental controls. And whatever standards we have, there are technologies also available. But whether you operate the technology, use the technology, is something which is always debated. The incineration fellow will say everything is within control. The other side will say it is not. But we should also trust that things will work, rather than saying that things are not working. For example, Japan, if you take, or most of the other countries, if you take, they have incineration facilities within the city itself.
Yes.
Tokyo, you take, there are about 25 waste to energy facilities within the city. So technology is available.
Correct.
Whether you use it or not, that's a different
and whether you use it properly or not.
Properly, and there is a cost to it, and are we ready to pay the cost?
Correct. I don't know if
Sir,
I don't know if Professor Chanakya can hear us, if he is online. Dr. Chanakya, can you hear us? Obviously not. He's not able to hear.
Yeah, I can hear. I think I can hear, but I couldn't hear.
So, is there anything that you would like to sort of add here, either with reference to the discussion we've been having or otherwise? Any comments you'd like to come in, because we'll be winding up in about 5 minutes? Chanakya?
Sir, I have a point to add here, sir.
And as I was
just a minute. Dr. Chanakya is speaking, please.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes,
so I want to end on a positive note, saying that we have succeeded in so many places and lots of lessons to learn. And we need to have a mix of all these things, wherever successes have been, wherever we understood successes, and stitch them all together and see which place what will work. I'm just coming from the Chennai's biomethanation plant, which seemed to be a very good success. But there's a lot of learning there, and Chennai is right on the right track to take it forward to meet both climate obligations as well as going towards a circular economy. There are lessons to be learned. We are not having the last word, and obviously we will make a large number of mistakes, and we have to correct them and take it forward. Yes, some patience and go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chanakya. Ms. Dakshayani, I think you wanted to say something?
Yes. Sir, this is answer to Mr. Kurian Joseph. He was talking about on single-use plastics and other material which cannot be recycled, send it to the cement kilns. Actually, we are also having a pyrolysis plant. It is in Ranipet, near to Chennai, wherein we process the single-use plastic and also the tires, waste tires, into oil, furnace oil, and we supply back into the industries. So that is another vertical what I have. Wherein this, whatever plastic we are talking about, single-use plastic after biomethanization has got lot of soil. Because of that only, I'm not willing to process it in my plant because of the soil contamination. But in case if the government is able to give a support price For every district, you can give one plasma gasification, which can degrade the entire material and convert that into energy in their own premises itself. And that energy can be grid back into the entire municipality area wherever they require. So that if they are able to take it forward, definitely we can work towards it, because we are also into solid waste, but doing lot of advanced applications in managing the solid waste, not getting into the segregation part at all. Reason is because last 10 years we have done so much of work on it. So finally we have arrived at that, the single point solution for a solid waste. That already we are executing projects.
Yeah.
If you want, we can take it personally on discussion, sir. Thank you.
See, as I have said, each technology has got its own place and its own limitation. When we talk about pyrolysis, yes, it's a viable technology, but you require clean, segregated plastic. Okay, when you have a mix of plastic and textile, your technology will not work. So we should know and accept the potential of each technology and limitation of technology, and try to apply the combination as required. Now, the plasma pyrolysis, it's a costly technology, so cost is also important. So we have to take into account all these aspects. If plasma pyrolysis technology can solve at a cost at par with other technologies, please bring such technologies, and our municipalities are looking for such technologies.
Good. Thank you. Thank you all very much. I think we have reached our concluding point. I think we've had an excellent discussion, very good presentations of solutions tried, lessons learned, and approaches in different cities. I think one learning definitely that we take away is, firstly, that each city, each urban area will have its own peculiarities, and therefore systems have to be developed to address those concrete solutions, with a basket of approaches and a basket of technologies to handle those approaches, with common goals in mind. And that one size fits all approach is perhaps not the way to go. So once again, if I may, thank you all very much to all panelists, to our participants. I'd just like to request the panelists, if the presentations they have made could be shared with us. We would like to make it part of our documentation and for future learnings. If you are agreeable to that, we would do it, with an assurance that we will not share it or otherwise distribute it without your consent, but we would use it for our own purposes of documentation and learning. So with that, I will say thank you again very much to all panelists and participants, both here directly on Zoom and on YouTube. Thank you to Kirti Bhai, and thanks to all our panelists and participants once again. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chanakya. I can see you in the train. Yeah.
I'm making my point. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
good.
catch up and more details on this.
Yes, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Everybody.
Sir, you are on mute.
Chitrakshi, I think, thank you very much. Thank you, Bindhu. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Raghu Saab. I think it was a wonderful meeting today. And we look forward to hearing more, I think, as we go ahead and complete 4 more webinars of the